Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome. Remembering this, there's nothing new under the sun, but every sunrise is beautiful. Well, welcome today. I'm excited. We're going to be talking about conquering fear. So some of the main reactions to fear are what we want to talk about. One is turning inward. Like if somebody comes at you and you're upset or they're accusing you of something and you turn inward, you get quiet, you get sullen. And then we're going to look at aggression, to where some people, when under stress and are afraid, get very aggressive, and that pushes people away and keeps them from bothering them, right? There's an old saying that says you must know your adversary to defeat them, or you must know their desires so you can placate them. And I think it's important to look into that, because knowing yourself is the best way to know others and the best way to have a happy, peaceful, and contented life in the midst of a crazy world we live in, right? Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at, it's called turning inward. That's what I like to call it. And it's where something offends you, something scares you, something bothers you, and you turn inward. You become quiet, and you don't really know how to respond, don't know what to do, so you turn inward and your mind starts cranking around and you start thinking about, many things. Maybe the solution, maybe how to get away. Depression and anxiety and fear have a common thread, and this thread is what I like to call is fixation. And depression or fear, or all these things, fear can cause depression, these things are all related or interrelated. But when you have fear and you have this introspection, you get fixated on it. So when you turn inward, it's a protective thing that you do to keep people from hurting you any further. Somebody says something abusive or something you feel is abusive, then you become quiet and you may, avoid them or whatever to keep yourself, safe and protected. But there's that old saying that there's nothing to fear but fear itself, although that's not really true. There are many, many things to fear. Somebody pointing a gun to your head, or stealing your car, or your house is on fire, or you're running out of food in the pantry and the shelves are empty at the store. There are lots of things to fear. But we're talking about relationship type fear, where there's something inside you that is feeling violated. So you close in, you get fixated, and you say, I'm alone in this. This person is against me. And you feel isolated, and then you isolate yourself even more, and it becomes easy to kind of isolate yourself forever. I mean, not necessarily forever, but it becomes easy to isolate yourself for long periods of time. And during that time, you lose your opportunity to bond with these people, the opportunity to do other things that you want to do. Similar to depression, where you become fixated on whatever thought it is that makes you, or thoughts that make you depressed. Your mind goes in these circles. I'm no good, or life is no good, or there's no point in this, or I'm stupid, or nobody loves me. Whatever it is that's causing your depression, you get fixated and you become isolated in these thoughts. And there is a theory in which I heard years ago, and I thought was interesting, and I think it's true to a degree, like many things. There are dozens of ways to look at life, and there are millions of books written about how to look at life, even if they look different, very different in the way they approach it, even like health and food. All these books can look very different, but it could just be simply a different way of looking at the same thing. Like you turn a dime, and in each way it reflects a different truth, or a different way to look at that particular truth, right? So in one of them, and this theory goes that happiness is simply distraction. And I know that's very simplistic and a little but think about it for a minute. When are the times that you are the happiest, or when is it the times where you watch your children playing? When are they the happiest? Are they happiest when they have nothing to do? Or are they happiest when they're just sitting there contemplating the world and the universe? Maybe. But generally they're happiest when they're distracted. They're engaged with other people, they're doing things. So if you get angry and you pull back and don't engage the other person, you're not only not solving the problem, you're exacerbating the problem by not participating in solving it. To draw close to this person, or even if you're not going to draw close, come to some sort of understanding. So when you get to this point where you're isolating, it's good to do a couple things that can help. One is you can say, I am pulling into myself, I've been injured, or I feel injured. Set a timer, be by yourself, think for a while, but don't think too long. 5 minutes, 15 minutes. But if you start going much more than that, unless you're actively doing something to think, like journaling, even that can go too long, or watching videos, that can go too long. I think it's really good to learn, but learn and be an active learner if you're going to do this. Don't just entertain yourself. Although sometimes it may be okay to entertain yourself. I'm not a doctor or psychiatrist, and you need to talk to them. But I think for me, when I was traveling through difficult times, it was really important to take time to learn, but then get distracted. So in other words, become involved in something and grow, and allow little things into your life that help you grow, not these great goals. And you can have great goals, but when you're depressed or you're lonely or you're injured or you're fearful, sometimes it's just a little goal that will help you get away from that situation, to come out from yourself. Take a break, set a timer, entertain yourself a little bit, learn a little something, and then figure out how you're going to approach this person that has offended you, or whatever it is that scares you, whether it's a new job, or not having a job, or the job that you're at now is not making any money, so you're an entrepreneur like I am, and you're not bringing any money in, and you're starting to worry. Well, you need to make a plan, but more than make a plan, you need to start executing, even if it's a little bit each day. And most motivational speakers and stuff will tell you to write things down, but that's a good idea. Check your list off, that feels good. But importantly, do something, challenge yourself, and this is one way to fix fear. As it relates particularly to relationships, is that you can go inward for a little while, but you have to have the goal to come outward and talk to the person about what you've learned. And I think if you are willing to learn about yourself and grow within yourself, and this is a person that you love and respect, that you can take in what they're saying and listen to them, and then grow and respond in a reasonable way. And the reasonable way may be, I hear what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree, but I will think about it, and we can get back in touch in a week about the subject, or a day, or whatever that it takes to do that. Anyway, so turning inward can be tricky. So I think it's a tool. I think it's a preservation tool that we naturally have. Some people are not given to aggression, so instead of when somebody comes at you, you don't want to be aggressive back, you draw in. And I think those tend to be the givers and people pleasers. So you can get walked over, and used too much. And so it's a good idea to take that break, figure out what you're going to do, get back in touch with the person, and try to resolve this problem. And each time you do this, you'll get stronger at it. It's like there are things that I wouldn't do years ago that are now still hard for me. Believe it or not, going to a yoga class by myself is not really pleasant for me. I'm very introverted. And not the class itself, but it's walking into the class. So I walk up to the class, I just go, and I walk in, and nothing happens. The ground doesn't open up and swallow me. The walls don't close in. The person behind the counter just says, hi, whatever. And then I go in there and I do my thing. And, so there's nothing to fear but fear itself in many circumstances. So you get better and better at it over time by practicing not turning inward. Or as you turn inward, think, do I need to turn inward now? Can I take a deep breath? Can I walk into the studio? Can I go into the gym? Can I go in and talk to my boss? Can I go ask that girl, woman, man, boy out for a date? Can I just introduce myself to my neighbors? I had neighbors come over the other day and introduce themselves, and we've lived here for 10 years, but they walked all the way across the yard, and we could see them coming for 100 yards, and they had to make that step to walk over. And it's a little uncomfortable when you've never met somebody. We had a great time chatting, and now I have neighbors that I know, and it was a great thing. So anyway, some thoughts about turning inward and dealing with fear. All right, so let's go to part 2 and take a look at this. So now let's look at part 2 of conquering fear, which is lashing out. Now this is the personality type, and we all can be there, but that generally is more aggressive, or can be really quiet and pent up with stress and anger, or they wait too long to talk about something and they lash out. If you're trying to help somebody and you say, hey, wife, husband, friend, son, child, mother, father, grandfather, you did this the other day and it seems to be pretty consistent and it's not, seems to be very helpful. And you go, oh, but you do the same thing. You're exactly the same and you do this other thing that's much worse than I do. That's a fear, that's a type of aggression, and it's not super aggressive, but it is designed to push you away, right? It shows that they're afraid to look at themselves, or possibly they don't respect you, but I would hope if you're giving advice like that you're probably close enough to give that sort of advice and you've thought about it for a while. One of the other ways that lashing out or that sort of thing manifests itself is somebody talking over you. You're in a discussion and maybe you're trying to help them. Maybe they're even asking you for advice, but this is this overwhelming energy where they can't relax and can't relate, and they talk over you, and you're saying, well, it seems to me that, the way you treat your spouse is such and such, and they're like, but I tried to do this, and I tried to do that, and I brought her this, and I said I wouldn't do that, and it just gets really loud and overwhelming. And that's something you want to look at in other people, but it's also something you want to look at in yourself. When people come to you with something, can you, I do this a lot, but can you center yourself? Even if you don't do it the way I'm doing it physically, can you think inside, the Wim Hof, take a breath and relax and say, okay, what is it you want to share with me in your heart, in your mind? So, and then another way, and it's kind of a subtle way of, well, I don't know how subtle it is, but kind of aggression is, and it tends to be women more than men, but men do it too. I've done it before, so we do it. But when they get offended and you try to help them, or you point out, you really messed up there, and they get offended, and then you go to put your hand on them or comfort them. It's like, I didn't really mean it. And it's like, don't touch me. The old don't touch me thing. And we could go down the road of don't touch me, where that ends up. And it can be, it can be used as a tool of manipulation, and it can also be used to slightly torture your partner in many, many ways. So the old don't touch me is another form of aggression. It's punishment, and it's a physical, it's a real, that's why I categorize it under aggression, because it is really unfair to the other person. We lean on each other. It's easy to see that we lean on each other for emotional strength at times and community, but when you take away community from somebody, or communion from somebody that you normally have, it really does hurt. And then they could lash out, or they could hide, or, it does this long thing. So what do? We have to, if you're the one that's lashing out, or somebody's lashing out at you, you have to think, okay, what is it I'm afraid of? Because anger and fear are very similar and often completely tied together. You get a mouse stuck in a corner and you're trying to get him out of your house, that little bitty dude will stand up on his back legs, make some noise, and it will bite you, man. So even a little mouse, when under stress and fear, can get very, very dangerous. Really, they're mean. They'll chase a full-grown cat away, if they're really, really stuck in a corner. So, well, in the case of a mouse, it's obvious it's life or death. That's what they're afraid of. But for you, what is it? What is it inside that says this person is trying to hurt me, not trying to help me? What is it you're protecting? Is it something from your childhood? Is it a fear? It could be a million things. Almost always with me, as an example, I am conversely very strong-willed, very stubborn, but also very weak inside. Because I tend to give and do things for other people in order to get, in return, appreciation. Well, if somebody doesn't give me appreciation, whether they intend to or not, it makes me feel bad about myself. Well, they must not care about me. Or if I do a good job for somebody and work really hard, and they go and point out the one thing that's not right or not good and say that the job was, look at that, that's horrible. Well, that makes me feel like I'm really bad, or I get angry at them. I go, well, I did all this for you, and I worked hard for 10 days, and all you can point out is this little bitty problem. And so I can lash out in anger. Another example that's probably common, way, way too common, is road rage. All right, so what's the solution to road rage? Road rage, which I've been looking for many, many, many years, because I tend to get aggravated on the road. And I knew for a long time that it has to do with you feel like you have rights on the road. And if somebody violates those rights, then you get angry. And what I've decided over the time is that when I'm in the car, I own the car. The car is on the road, therefore I own the road. The car is moving down the road, therefore I own the space in front of me, the space behind me, the space beside me. If you violate any of those areas around me, front and behind me or anything, I'm sure if there was a helicopter above me, I'd get mad at them too, that you're violating me, because that road belongs to me. I control that road. And you're being a danger to me, to my family, to yourself, and I have a superhero complex, and I own it, and I'm going to fix it, and you're going to pay one way or another. I'm going to honk at you, or I'm going to tailgate you, or just get angry. And 9 times out of 10, the person in front of you has no idea you're mad. They have no idea. They go on about their day, listening to music and having a good time, and you're mad because they pulled in front of you, and they were just trying to get to work. So when you feel yourself triggered with anger, or you feel like it's out of control and all you can do to control is to get mad or talk over somebody or do any of those things, or the don't touch me or whatever, once you get to the place where you're aggravated and angry, a couple things you can do, and what you've talked about in other videos, but is realize that we live in a friendly universe. And I say that with a smile because it doesn't look very friendly often. And you look at the news, it looks terribly unfriendly and downright scary. But for the most part, I believe, and even if it's not true, I think it's the best way to live life up here. And that is to believe that regardless of what happens to you in life, regardless of how people treat you, you're part of something bigger. Even if your life is sacrificed somehow, whether it's giving your life or, something happens to where your life falls apart, if you believe that something good can come out of it, for somebody else, for you, for your kids, or for whatever, or just the fact that you went through something very difficult and came out on the other side and you're okay, you've made the universe better. And the universe likes that. It feeds on itself, and then it feeds on other people. Every good deed you do generally helps raise the whole population up. So it's important to keep in mind that we're part of something bigger than us. You don't have to be religious necessarily. I am not really religious. I am spiritual, if you want to say it that way. But being part of something bigger than you is very, very important. Look at the big picture. Believe that it's a friendly universe. Believe that you are a learner. So even if somebody does have something to say about you, or the person in front of you is not driving very well, in your opinion, that you have something you can learn. And by your reaction to these things, you can contribute to the world around you to make it a better place. We can have that attitude, and it really goes a long way into solving depression and anger both. Okay, so here we go. On to part 3, and this one is pushing outward. Part 3 is very much a personality type. You know the type of people, or maybe you're the type of person, I can be this type of person, where you're so busy you don't really have time to consider life. So you have fear, but you don't have time to experience the fear because you're so busy, you can't possibly. And then when you have downtime, you often will medicate with alcohol or TV or computers, flipping through the thing, and now video games, and with the little hoodie things on where you're in a different universe, whatever that's called, meta. And so if you're always busy or always distracted, and it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, because earlier I said that there's a theory that happiness is simply distraction. Well, I didn't say I actually completely agreed with that. I think that is part of it, but we also need to have reflection, which can be a distraction with insight, where you're actually actively doing something that's not just being distracted, right? So it's just using distraction in a positive way. So if you're busy all the time, or you're just this loud personality that, it's just like when they're in the room, they're the only person you see, and just controlling the environment, and it's just overwhelming, then maybe you need to look at yourself and say, why do I feel the need to be so loud all the time? I read a book not that long ago, and I'm going to fail to remember the name of it, but it was a lady that was a psychiatrist or a psychologist for many, many years. And she tells the story of, I think, 4 different people that she worked with for a period of time, one of including herself working with some other psychiatrist. And one of the characters was like a Hollywood type that was really overbearing and kind of mean and controlled the situation in many different ways, and eventually came to realize he was doing that and had quite an epiphany and realized, I think in the book, that it was a trauma of losing one of his children in a car accident that put him in this state where he couldn't relax, because if he relaxed he would think about it and then he would have to reconcile this trauma of losing his child, and I think in his case he thought it was his fault. So the aggressive person can be really obnoxious, and you can almost hate them just because that's just horrible. But inside them there's fear. There's fear of not being good enough. Maybe the family treated them differently. The parents treated them different than the other kids, and they felt like they liked the other kids more than them, so they had to make a bunch of noise to be loved or whatever. So these deep-seated pains we overcompensate for, and then, like I said, in the quiet moments, if there are any, you end up using substances or things, boats, cars, to placate the unhappiness. And I'm not saying that any of those things are bad in and of themselves at all. They're actually awesome. I have plenty of toys that I enjoy quite a bit. But it is important to also have time to be quiet and to see if you're okay. And one of the measures is how you relate to other people, how close are you to other people, how free are your children to critique you in a loving way, how free is your spouse to critique you in a loving way, friends, and that sort of thing. Can you listen or can you not listen? Can you maybe, I'm not really good in the moment a lot of time as far as when somebody's coming at me, but I'll think about it for a day, sometimes days, and then I'll get back to them if I feel like I should. And so it's a matter of growth, finding out where you really are. And if you really want to grow and really want to be productive and happy, you're going to want that input from those that are close to you and qualified. If you're the busy bee or the loud person, there are a couple things you can do that are helpful to gain introspection. If you're constantly upgrading, changing, don't seem to really get any satisfaction from all that you own or create or whatever, and you're just on to the next, on to the next, on to the next, this leaves little room for other people and analyzing and growing. So one of the things you can do is figure out what it is that is your weakness. Say you're a person that always is trying to control other people by finding out what knowledge they have so you can use it, or to make sure they don't have more than you, or what are they doing better than me. So write down on the calendar, say, I'm going to practice for a week. I'm going to go a week without probing people. I'm going to let the universe flow and not worry about how, why, what, when, who, and where, all those things that people talk about. But instead, you're going to just listen to other people for a week. Try it. It's an amazing, amazing thing to do. If you tend to be a talker like I am, and I'm very introverted, but once you're in a room with me and I got you, I'm very much a talker. But it's also good to listen. And over time, I've practiced listening, and not that I do it well all the time, but when I get into the mode and make myself into the mode, listening can become quite fun, especially if somebody's really learning something and sharing something. It's a blast. Again, at this point, I want to emphasize that being a busy bee, being an overachiever or a strong achiever, there's nothing in the world wrong with that. We need people like that, and I'm grateful for people that have, high degree of diligence and are pushers, driven people. That's a good thing. But if you're driven to the point where it's hampering your relationships, you may not even know it to some degree. You may be frustrated with other people because they're not on board with you, or whatever it is. There'll be indicators. People will be frustrated with you. So if you get feedback from people you love, your wife, your friends, your sister, or whatever, and you get enough feedback where there's a question, I have a few suggestions that you can do to maybe help gain some perspective in this area. So one thing you could do is do what I call a week-long Sabbath, okay? And this is a particular Sabbath that's good for, it's practicing listening or practical listening. So you go a week without asking people what they're doing or why they're doing it. You let the universe flow. You don't need to know why or how for 1 week. You don't ask people what, how, why, when, all those, typical questions. You just, You can ask somebody, of course, how they're doing, and then you let it flow and you listen. You don't analyze, you judge lightly, because we're always judging, but you're going to judge lightly and you're going to listen to input. And you're going to focus on sharing from your heart and then not have an agenda. Just share, and then whatever feedback, let it happen. But the main part of it is that you are not in control for a little while. You let the other person be in control for 1 week. All the people around you, let them be in control, right? And I don't mean of everything that's going on. If you're a boss, you have to be a boss. But I'm just saying that in personal relationships and even with your employees or your boss or whatever, try to let things go. Let it flow for a week and see if you can go a week without imposing your will and your thinking, your needs really on other people. The second one is don't be afraid of being wrong. Don't be afraid of somebody else being better. It hurts a little bit when somebody's better than you, depending on your personality. If you're a nurturer more than a conqueror, these things are different for different people. But don't worry about if somebody has more love than you. Be accepting of the amount of love that you have and go with it. Feel a connection to God and the universe. Allow this connection to go and flow with it, and let your life be out of your control, if you will. It's okay. And I will share with you one last thought before we close here, and that is, if you believe in the friendly universe and get the most out of every possible moment, there's a frame of mind that you have to have in order to do that, and that is everything's going to be okay. There's many songs written about that, and it's amazing, and it doesn't always feel that way in the midst of trouble and heartache or whatever. But my example is a pretty dramatic one. But let's say you're taking off in an airplane from an airport, and you're a little bit nervous about flying anyway, and then all of a sudden the engines go out, and you realize you're probably going to die. The airplane starts to make noise and do funny things. You can feel the anxiety in the compartment raise. People start panicking, and then there's more and more chatter, and it gets loud, and you start going down and down and down. You're going to die, and you're in panic, and you have no hope, and you're just out of control and not in the moment, if you will, or completely in the moment, if you want to look at it that way. But little did you know that Sully is at the helm, and he pulls that bad boy up and lands it in the river, to where everyone, over 200 people or whatever it was, were saved in that plane, and they all went home to be with their families that day. And you literally had a fun ride, I guess, but during that moment, you were sure you were going to die, and it was all over, but it wasn't, right? So in moments of life where you think it's all over, you're out of control, they're after you, God is against you, it feels that way sometimes. The universe is against you. Your spouse is against you. Your kids are against you. Your dog bit you because you reached under the bed to pull it out and it didn't want to get out. It was afraid of the lightning, which, is what it is. So remember, that plane may just land and it'll be okay, and more than likely will be. Why not enjoy every moment, even the ones that seem like there is no hope? You can enjoy every moment and realize that all bad things pass eventually. It doesn't mean it's going to be the way you want it to be, but it will pass. So why not have the best attitude you can and go with the flow, if you will. So as Wim Hof would say, have a good day and a good life. All the love, all the power. All right, bye-bye.